Let's stop being dumb. Like we could go and have a conversation with the ancestors, and the ancestors will say to us, "Are you stupid? You are surprised that the very people who stole your language, stole your people, stole your religion, stole your drums, stole your name, stole your entire legacy and history, and rewrote themselves as being the heroes. You're surprised that today they're stealing your education and your literature, your curriculum, and even in some cases, your history and your heritage. You're surprised? This is ancestors talking to you. You big dummy." That's what Fred Sanford would say. "You big dummy."
It is Freedom Friday and you are still not free.
Welcome to Freedom Friday. It is Friday and you are still not free. And every day you are getting even less free now that we are into the full swing of the Trump era, part 2. The Supreme Court now allows Donald Trump to proceed with the Department of Education layoffs. What it means for student loan borrowers, for K-12 students, for students that are marginalized, and others is that the government has just decided that you do not need to be literate. You do not need to be numerate. You do not need to be educated. What you need to be is ready to be a slave to the system, slave to the government, a slave to Elon Musk and the entire class of billionaires. They want you to be serfs. They want you to have no freedom whatsoever to think for yourselves, to act for yourselves. And definitely, by all means, do not resist. Because if you resist, they will pepper spray you. They will hog tie you. They may even disappear you, and you might wake up in Ecuador or somewhere, not knowing how you got there. You just blacked out, and all of a sudden you're sitting in a cell somewhere. And the most that will happen with that is that the media, the corporate media, will wring their hands. "Oh my God, we can't believe what they're doing," except for the people who own the media are having daily conversations and lunch and Waldorf salads with this exact same administration that they're supposed to be covering. They are playing golf with each other. And let me tell you one thing about this moment. Let's just talk about this moment really quick. This is the best lesson of what the sum total of a political operations ideas are, because at this moment, you are answering the question, well, if the conservatives completely took over everything, how would they paint the world? What kind of world would it be? You can ask this question about any group. If moderates took over the world, if liberals took over the world, if conservatives took over the world, what kind of world would they paint? Well, I think if liberals took over the world, you would probably have somewhat of a corporate government with a lot of corporate entities paying a lot of corporate money for access to the government, except for what that would probably produce is a lot of programs, a lot of social programs of some sort mixed with the corporate programs. If progressives took over or anarchists took over, you would probably have a lot more of a safety net, a lot more health insurance, a lot more education for everybody. Definitely, you would not have the love of the police and love of a military state and the love of a police state. But when conservatives take over, when MAGA takes over, that's when you see what they're really about. And what they are really about right now is the only people who deserve rights are rich people. The only kids in schools that deserve any attention are the kids that play with Barron Trump. The only people that deserve civil liberties under the Constitution are white straight men and the women that love them, and that's it. This is what you can tell once you give them the entire government. They have no self-control. They've never had any self-control. As a matter of fact, when it comes to owning all of the resources or sucking up all of the everything that everybody has, that has been their talent. It is the thing that they have. So it's almost like setting loose an obese man into a buffet when they take over. They can't help themselves. They go straight for the desserts and they eat it all. And then they leave all the vegetables behind and they eat all the meat and they go for all the drinks and the red dye number 3. They do it all because they can't help themselves. It's a problem. Anyways, I hope we're going to do better now in understanding that. Let's stop being stupid. I mean, the biggest benefit of a white supremacist autocracy is that you don't have to pay attention to reality. You get to just call things what you want to call them. You get to call fat skinny. You get to call blue red, and it has to become whatever you call it. So this thing around, well, I don't see a problem. You guys just need to stop talking about it. That's what you say when you have the complete power and authority to deny that someone else is experiencing something that you're not experiencing. Our people know a lot in general about the problem. But then when it comes about what we should do, it feels like, man, we've been in this so long, it's hopeless. These people aren't going to change. It's going to stay the same. That's where I think it starts breaking down. And I don't know how you get through to any of us, because we have a right to be cynical about everything right now. So what would you say about, like, historically, there have been lots of breakthroughs in how we fight back and what we do and whatever. Those are the things I think we know too little about. How do we get back into that discussion?
Well, I think centering humanity, right? Centering the fact that the only reason we even have a conception of freedom within this society isn't because Thomas Jefferson wrote all men are created equal. It's because Black people took up the charge and, like, if all men are created equal, what about this? And all groups have benefited from those fights. One thing I noticed, teaching all the years around, Black history, is just, oh, slavery again. And it's like, well, yeah, the type of story you learned about the slaughter, you learned about the genocide, you learned about the Ma'afa, right? But we're going to look at how people survived that, how people thrived throughout, regardless, and also rebelled and resisted. The story of many folks from, like, Denmark Vesey, Nat Turner, to throw out someone, David Walker, writing a piece of literature that just got flooded in the South, to learn that folks were killed if they were found passing out that literature or reading that literature to enslaved folks, or in states where slavery was ironclad. Those are the stories that really get to the guts of what it means to be despite. And I think that motivates people, be like, wow, people were able to make things happen. People still loved and hurt and had children in those conditions despite all the things that this society has put upon them. And I think that speaks to the larger story. I think if we get caught in the muck and we feel down, right? Like, I can't lie to you, man. Like, I wrestle with and have a real tension around what reconciliation in this society actually is, if it's even possible, if it's even desirable at this point. Because we have gone through many times where folks have believed and hoped that now things would be different, right? After civil rights acts, after enslavement, right? There's many points in history where we can point to where people are like, oh, it's going to get better now. And then we look around now, we're in 2025. We have a president that brings in white refugees from South Africa. Black and brown immigrants are being targeted and being exported to third world or third countries that they're not even part of, and put into prisons, or alligator Alcatraz, whatever nonsense that these folks come up with. See, that's the reality that so exists. That's the continuity of this society. But at the same time, how are people resisting? That's why stories like what we see in LA was so, like, powerful for a lot of folks. You know what I mean? Like, those are the things that we need to cling to. Because at the end of the day, when you stand for humanity, when you stand for folks' rights, regardless of who they are, where they're from, what their lifestyles are, that's the side that we can continuously point to. That historically, Black people, for the most part, right? You can always find anomalies, right? You can always find Black people who are against the ending of slavery. But at the same time, you got to be paying attention to what the folks were doing, to everyday folks, what kind of conversations they were having that bubbled up and created something different, a world that did not exist or even seemed impossible.
Let's not gloss over this last point. This one of these points that you just made, though. Yes, it's somewhat an anomaly that there were some of those people that looked like us that were participating in the dumb stuff against us, whatever. I feel like they are more successful now. So as we attempt to put the focus on resistance and the way that we've resisted, that's really a rank and file discussion. And in between the rank and file and that group that you say was, like, a smaller group, which is true, there's also this continuum of activity of complying with the system. So it's like a continuum. Tell me a little bit about what you think, number one, first, about calling out the real weirdos, the ones that are like participating 100% and maybe even gaining from it, and then showing the rank and file the ways in which that there is a slippery slope to getting there, like it's a continuum of behavior of resistance, meaning don't resist or don't participate in X, Y, Z, blah, 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 because that eventually is the road to hell. What do you think about having that conversation with the rank and file about calling out the ways in which not all of us are with us?
Well, I mean, we got to just keep it a bean. Like, we need to have folks in our circles that are about that life, not just by saying it, because there's a lot of folks that just talk about it, right? And they just might be a government spy in your midst trying to incite something, right? But there's also people who are like, oh, snap, I never thought of it like that. That's messed up. That makes me angry. Okay, so what are we going to do about that? What are and you're right. We live in an age now when there's more sophisticated tools to encourage compliance, encourage complicity, right? The fact that I think we were talking about this before the John, right? Before we started talking here about ICE agents getting paid like $100,000. Like, those type of things that incentivize these type of behaviors, they're going to exist. But then we also need to look at history and recognize that if we do this and go down this route in this way and you co-sign it, you're part of the issue. Like, one of the things I really hold to is, I roll my eyes when folks are like, oh, well, we need to, and this is more of like a liberal bend, we need to like rename the Tomahawk missile because it's culturally insensitive, right? That's the type of mentality that we're dealing with. It's like, but you're
Yeah.
not focused on what the real issue is, right? The fact that those things kill people, the fact that they're used and sold to other people to kill people. And I think we need to be very explicit about that reality, but also very explicit with ourselves about how we move within this reality. I was talking to my wife yesterday, and I was like, one thing I've learned recently is to be real, even if everything around you is fake, even if things are just about image over substance, even if things are just like, put around with flowers up on top of a piece of meat that hides the rotten piece underneath. You have to be able to be real regardless. And when I say real, not just like popping off at the top of your head, even though folks, I can't lie, I feel like I need to do that. But you need to recognize you damned if you do, damned if you don't. So what are you doing it for? Because when we find ourselves in this situation now, I don't see it improving. I don't see it headed in the right direction. I don't see no, arc towards justice in the way that we're handling things right now. And folks need to stop telling themselves that that's true.
Yeah,
Um,
which part is true?
that we are headed in the right direction. That, like, goes back to the previous conversation. You just need to, get over it and just, forget about those things. It's not like that anymore. And it's like, well, you don't understand the continuity in which has produced the situation that we see right now. That comes from a whole intellectual heritage that has founded this country, right? And so when we think of it in those type of terms, and then we're real and not willing to be complicit or complacent within this, like, but at the same time, I can't lie, that is a very difficult thing. You can be ostracized from your communities. You can be accused of doing too much. Like, why are you always talking about that? If you just stop talking about that, then it no longer exists. But then where do you find yourself? Are you co-signing what currently does exist? And if you are, by default, whether you are conscious of that reality or not, you are part of the problem. And that problem would be dehumanizing other folks, being engaged in conversations and uh, relationships that reproduce the kind of toxicity that this society, this culture has produced.
Yeah. I I wonder if you get to a place where you feel like the benefits of going asleep are better than the benefits of waking up, right? And I think that's because, first of all, the benefits do get better over time, and the more sleep you go, it feels like the more bliss you have because you're dumber to most things and you're happier to the things that you're getting in terms of in return. Like there's a tax on understanding and knowing. There's a payoff and a benefit and a dividend to being stupid. Stupid pays dividends, right? It's a good business. Like in America's in the stupid business. So the dividends are pretty strong. I get why people would say, man, listen, all that stuff you're talking about, that is just that's a lot. I just, I just want to go to work and come home and live my life and blah, blah. I see how people could feel that way. And then, let's be real. Let's just be real. Because this now I'm gonna say something that's very real about this. Some of the most woke or knowledgeable people of these things in your life are annoying as hell, right? They come to Thanksgiving or they come over for a thing and they want to point everything out. Well, that comes from like the slavery of the people in Aboriginal cultures or whatever. You're like, bro, listen, I just invited you over for like a game or something. Like I don't need to every single time you come over be doing this, right? And don't do it with my kids. Your kids walk in with something, they be like, yeah, young man, you know what? That thing that you have that comes out of oppression. So maybe there needs to be a different bedside manner for the people that know the most about these things. Maybe they need to be more professorial, more like a professor, or something. I don't know.
A teacher.
It feel a teacher. There you go, like an educator, because oftentimes the call out part of this behavior, like once you could take two tracks. I know something now, so I can teach about it, or I can finger wag about it. Like I can make myself better than you, right? I don't think people want anybody coming to teach them anything. That it comes from a place of, oh, you're kind of stupid and I'm kind of smart, that goes back to the day where brothers used to get super aware. I'm not going to call it woke, aware, and they get so knee deep in the text of all that they were thinking that they couldn't talk to normal people anymore, right? Uh, um, and that's when you've taken it too far. But the opposite end of that, though, is that there's a lot that's going on right now that requires context. The government is doing things right now where we can say it's bad or whatever, but if we don't have context to what the behavior comes from, what it means, what it has meant in the past, the only thing we want is that people are smart enough to recognize when things are happening in the world that are going to harm them or enslave them or set them back 10 or 20 years, to not be perfect patsies for it, to be able to see it happening and see it coming. And you can't if you lack information. If you lack education, you can't see the things. And someone ahead of you might need to be the one who sees it to tell you about it, right? Everybody needs a Sojourner Truth and a Harriet Tubman in their life. And maybe that's some of what we need now. I look at this administration and it's so naked right now. I wonder what the point of no return is in terms of if you're dumb and you're not watching it happen, how far can it go before you wake up? And will you wake up in chains? Right? Like that's my biggest fear. And see, when I say that, people are like, oh, you make it too much. You're dramatic, blah, blah, blah. That's what they said right before they put you on a boat. Somebody sitting there saying, oh, man, they're giving us whiskey and guns. Man, you need to stop it. You need to stop it. And that same whiskey and guns dude who said that actually ended up in South Carolina working from sun up to sundown. Oh, what happened to those guns and that whiskey now? Well, see what happened was I was sitting there and all of a sudden I'm on a boat going across the country, whatever. Um, I want to ask you this about what I just said. How do you balance being able to live a normal life and have joy and being able to claim your right to your own mind space and have joy while also paying attention to the serious reality that is all around you? How do you balance that out?
Well, I would say number one, don't be arrogant. That's real. Like you, there was a time where you did not know as much as you know now, to quote Malcolm
That's
X,
right.
right? But
This is
then
true.
also at the same time, you also need to understand not everybody knows something, but not everybody knows everything, but everybody knows something. And be, humbled with that reality and be able to engage people in real terms while also at the same time living your life in a way which you're producing what you want to see, right? Raising your children, uh, having jobs that have or a profession that has meaning and substance to what you want to produce and make in the world. And it's no crystal stairs. You're going to struggle regardless of what you decide to do with your life. But what are you struggling for? And to what end are you struggling? And I think that's where it becomes joyful. For me, I know personally, like, I enjoy engaging people about these ideas, not in a way where it's like I'm coming to tell you everything and like you're just a empty deposit that I'm putting things into, but more in the way of like, I want to hear what you're talking about and hear what you think about these ideas, and I'll share what I think about these ideas. Because don't get it twisted, like my sons, they kind of roll their eyes and be like, we know, Dad, that this is, racist, that, white supremacy is embedded in everything. But like, yes, you do know, but understand that most people don't have these conversations. And I'm not saying this to, my sons and my boys in a way to make them feel bad about themselves or hate white people, whatever type of narrative things and people are talking about. I'm trying to teach them to be good people in a society that doesn't encourage people to be good people. And what you see from that, what you produce from that, that's the joy that I see for myself. But then also when I feel that tingling in the back of my head when I'm talking to a group of students or adults about a certain reality, knowing that somebody shifted the way they just thought, that also brings me joy. And it brings me joy in a way is like, even if it feels hopeless at times, even if it feels very depressing and not that it's not moving, it is. That it is moving regardless of anything anybody would say, no matter what the hate mail says, no matter what, these jokers who call themselves, when I'm not going to talk too much smack, but that's the
No, talk
reality.
smack, bro.
No, no,
Like, listen, talk smack.
listen, there's a lot of haters. But again, people are people are people. And people can only process as much as they've been processed. So there are levels to this. So the level that I talk to about this reality with my sons ain't the same type of level I'm going to talk to a group of white folks. And what I say to them ain't going to be the same what I say to a group of black folks in another space. You understand? And there's also levels to that understanding, because then you add the class element. Then there's also what the demographics of the room look like that dictate kind of how you approach and engage folks with these decisions. But knowing all, I mean, like, that's exciting to me, man. And I guess that's why I chose to be a teacher when I was younger. But at the same time, there's skill sets everybody have. So like when you were just talking, you know what I was thinking of? You know what person I was thinking of? I was thinking of Ella Baker. Ella Baker never believed that you had one charismatic leader. She said that would be detrimental, right? Her critiques of King. But at the same time, she's like, you give them the light, they'll find a way. It's not in the sense of telling them what to do or telling folks what it is, but it's like, here, let's look at this and see what it is. And what do you think? And she had faith that people would be able to develop their own programs in their context in which they exist and what they're dealing with, what they identified to be important, and that would be the crux and things that would lead the way. That's why the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, when that first started, that's why it was so powerful. And it had consensus building and it had models of democracy that people are still studying to this day. Even if that only lasted a short amount of time. That was created out of someone who believed that people, if given the right, the ability, given the right spaces, will come up with a program that they need to do in order to change the conditions in which they have identified.
There's so much like Ella Baker and others that we can learn from them that could be useful today, but I think people have they have a sense that that's old. That why you going all the way back there? What could we do to bridge the gap between that? Like no, there's a message in there. You need it, but you're going to turn your mind off the moment I start showing you black and white photos. Right? When I show you black and white photos, immediately you're going to say this is not relevant, so you're going to miss the point. How do we modernize the lessons out of those stories without leaving them in sepia tone, like without leaving them in black and white photos? What can we do for the kid today who's 17, 18, maybe even 25, 26, who needs it to come? They need their lesson, but they need to catch it differently than the way we've been packaging it. What would you do then?
Well, I can talk about like what I did as what I do as a teacher. I would engage them about what they are thinking about, what they believe the world is all about, right? Because people ain't coming in not knowing or having opinions about how the world operates. Shoot, half the time these children have experienced more situations than we can fathom that have informed their worldview, that have informed who they are. But then asking them why, asking them where that worldview comes from, who informs that worldview, right? So one of the things recent, the Clips album that does drop, good beats, good hip hop, and there's critiques of them. Oh, well, they're just talking about dope and da da da. And then other people are defending that, saying no, but like you don't say the same thing when people watch The Sopranos or love The Wire, right? Like we celebrate those things as works of art. Goodfellas, right? But why don't we do the same with the Clips? And I take it a further level and be like, nah, my critique is they trying to be like them. They're trying to be like those ideas. That's where it gets problematic. And so when you ask our students to engage in that way, not in a way that dismisses who they think they are, but asking them who they think they are. Like, and I think I've said it on here before. One of the quotes I've always used in my classroom was a Talib Kweli quote, and I would use it in the midst of teaching. I would have them analyze it at the beginning of the year and analyze it at the end of the year. Was if you travel down the river of tears in the boat of broken promises with heavy fog, how can you be clear exactly what your knowledge is? How do you
Wait, say
know?
this again. Say it again. Say it again. You can't be rushing past those things.
And see, I would do
Say it
that with the
again.
class, and they would do the
Yeah,
same
yeah,
thing.
yeah.
If you travel down the river of tears in the boat of broken promises with heavy fog, how can you be clear exactly what your knowledge is? So, how do you know what you know is really what you know? Who taught you that? How does it affect the way you see yourself? And how does it affect the way others see you? And when you get to them guts, like, who doesn't want to engage on that philosophical level, right? And then you hit them off with maybe a Dead Prez Day Schools video and then talk about like, well, how many times did you get an A in a class yet didn't learn anything? And everybody can point that out, right? Yeah, I got A in a class and I didn't learn anything, but you checked off the box. You learned how to be compliant. Because if you were going against what that person was doing in the front of that room, you wouldn't have walked away with that A. So your ability to conform to what their expectations were is what you learned. And that is learned much more than facts and knowledge and information and analytical skills. And we're not honest with each other about that reality. But our children, we know in our guts that that's true. And that's when you really start to get to it. And another person I need to mention and give a shout out to rapper wise that I would show videos to that's still putting out music is the rapper Low Key from the UK, who's put out songs, yeah, that's put out songs about, over materialism and capitalism, right? Terrorism. Put out songs about, all the atrocities that happen around the world, but then at the same time talks about how we have a responsibility to address it. And if you layer that correctly, if you engage the students, even if they think it's corny, be like, tell me why you think it's corny. And then tell me why this is good. I used to always joke with them. I would always say, fake Ross when Rick Ross was big, or Flake talking about Drake, right? And be like, he used to be on a Nickelodeon show, right? He was growing up in a mansion in Canada, and he talking about this. Why do you think that's being celebrated, and why people's lives are being devalued in it? Like, I'm tired of hearing someone rap over a beat. That's great, right? They have great beats, some of the worst music in the world, talking about how much they're great and how everybody else is trash. But that's what that is like. And again, goes back to my example of the Clips. I'm not upset about what they're doing. It's a beautiful piece of art. But then at the same time, that beautiful piece of art is just a reflection of the wickedness of this society.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then students know
So,
that.
and what I caught in a lot of what you just said right there is the medium. The medium right now is we are transferring knowledge through beats and rhythms and through hip hop, whatever we always have. This is not the newest idea, is that you're always learning something when you're listening to these things. So who you're listening to, I think, is really important,
And what are
right?
you
Like,
learning? And what are you
and what are you
learning?
learning from it?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't know if you notice. You may notice already. You probably did. I may have texted this to you, like the super group that's coming out. Who is it? It's
Oh yeah,
KRS
Rakim.
One,
Yeah, KRS-One,
Rakim, KRS One, Big
Big
Daddy
Daddy
Kane,
Kane.
I think.
Yep.
And I feel like I'm missing one person. I want to say it was like four people. But the interesting thing is going back to their day and their time of lyricism. KRS One used to consider himself a teacher, not a rapper. He used to consider himself a professor, basically using the rap medium for that. Now, today that could get a little corny. You got some folks out there in the education world who think that they are teaching through hip hop and they're booty. Like they need to stop doing it. Don't ever do that again, is what we should say to them. But for people listening and watching, we've had this back and forth on the show before about which of the conscious rappers are conscious in a way that we can respect, because corporate mainstream hip hop, even the ones that you think are saying the dopest stuff, are interlacing our oppression with their messages that you think are good, right? You're saying that, oh yeah, this one lyric, yeah, but the next lyric right after that was calling women hoes, right? Like, I'm sorry, I can, as deep as you think that is, he is still repeating the word that has been your downfall for years. So you talk about Talib. We've talked about Paris before. Like, people don't know Paris at all. I'm surprised about this, but every album, there's none of that on any of his albums. It is all straight. Like, if you want a mainline, straight Panther ideology, that's a Paris album, whatnot. Who else would you say? Like, I'm mentioning folks here, and you just mentioned a couple. I don't know about the Clips. Like, uh, I don't want to get too lost in that right now, but I'm watching it and I'm wondering. People are like this is dope. This is really profound, and I'm like, I like them and I like it, but I'm not finding the part that is so profound about it, right?
Yeah. I mean, the truth wrapped in a lie is still a lie. Like, don't
Yeah.
get that twisted. And truth be told, unfortunately, sometimes you need to eat the fish and spit out the bones.
Ooh,
So like,
okay. All right.
so
Well,
like,
damn.
I like I think of Nas with the 6 albums he just released, right, over the last couple years. Like, there's some profound stuff in those songs, even when it comes to just grown man rap. Um, and then we also have to seek it out. So like Stickman and Young Noble, who just passed away, he actually committed suicide, released an album called Integrity. And just every song is about like, and it's grown man rap, don't get it twisted, like the young kids probably roll their eyes when they heard it. But they're talking about life. And there's nothing wrong with exposing people to this and then having a conversation and be like, I don't, like, you might not like this, but like, tell me why. And then tell me why you do like this. Tell me why, like a rapper like Trinidad James, if we're going to date ourselves a little bit, comes out with all gold. What was that song called? And
you're not gonna date me. You dating yourself, brother. I don't know nothing about what you talking about. I'm too young for this.
exactly. And he was like a big star at one time. So like these corporate assembly line manufactured rappers are put out there to our children. They pump poison, and then we turn around. We don't even know who they are the next couple of years. Like, and that's another thing you point out to students. Like, who's the big rapper now, right? And from Philly, it was Meek Mills. I don't know what the kids listen to anymore because I think I'm getting old. But I'm like, y'all over here, Major Figures, right? That was the biggest thing in Philadelphia. They were talking that, gutter stuff and all that. And so, like, showing those patterns and those circumstances that have created the situation and being honest, like, 5 major corporations own 90% of the media in which is mainstream.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
why does it seem like all of them are telling you the same thing?
And for people listening and watching, I'm sure that if you watch us long enough, we're always going to come back to hip hop.
Yeah.
We're always going to come back to, and it's not really hip hop that we're coming back to, it's the medium. So when you ask yourself, what's the medium that is the biggest teacher? It's entertainment. In terms of our kids are getting a fire hose of information and it's coming from medium. Which one? Well, definitely music, videos, entertainment, social media, things like the Shade Room and others, which is now old. I mean, the next 8 versions of that, whatever, World Star Hip Hop, 10 years ago, 8 years ago was the thing. And now there's different versions of that. That's the medium. When you think kids are spending a certain amount of time in class every day, and the amount of time that they're spending fully present mentally in that class is about half at best.
At best. I
But
was about to say
at best, yeah, at best. But what they are paying attention to constantly is the median that engages their attention, the attention stealers and thieves. And hip hop is one of those biggest ones. So if you wanted to teach something right now, and you got every rapper and every social media influencer and everybody, whatever, on the same page for something educational, it'd be very powerful, be very effective. You can make a lot happen with that. But what you just said is actually a crazy reality, which is the majority of those teachers that I'm calling teachers are owned. Majority of them are owned by multinational corporations that long ago figured out the profit margin of our misery is better than the profit margin of our liberation. And that is the driving force of all this. So now, again, everything comes back to hip hop. And of course, now everything has to come back to the matrix. Somehow you got to unplug your kids from the matrix. Somehow you got to unplug them. And boy, that sounds easy when I say it, but it's not going to happen. So we got to figure out something. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's putting pressure on our artists to be artists and to be real revolutionary. I like what you said. What is it? Eat the fish and spit out the bones. Uh, yeah, maybe. Maybe leave the fish alone. Maybe just go for a salad, right? Because it come out the ground and it's real, and and it don't have no bones, right? As a matter of fact, you start asking yourself questions like, "Why does my food have bones?" Right? That must mean that it lived once, right? Anyways, this is going to become a vegan show. All right, brother. I know that you are down in Mississippi. Any last words that you think that we can impart to our people about this, recognizing what is going on in the world as a pattern, not as an incident from today, so that we can keep ourselves safe? What would you say is the final word on that?
I would say what folks have just discovered, right? Discovered, even though our folks knew for generations, and I keep on coming back to this. The past, the present, and the future exist at the same time. So, what are we gaining from the past to inform what we need to do now in order to create a future we want to see? And if you ain't thinking in them terms, not in the sense of an individualistic self attainment and accumulation of nonsense, but something much more larger, a larger vision that centers humanity, man, I would say you're wasting your time at this point.
That's so deep. That's so deep. All right. Well, appreciate you as always, brother. Love you jumping on from Mississippi, and for people listening and watching. This has been another episode of Freedom Friday, and you are not free, but hopefully you're freer after this badass discussion that we just had between Ish and me. And please share this with other people as you think it is appropriate. We'll see you the next time on the Freedom Friday show.